Hey there, listeners, and welcome aboard to our brief reads into James Clear's Atomic Habits.
And this is a book all about how tiny changes can lead to remarkable results.
Yeah.
So we're going to be looking at excerpts from the book itself.
Okay.
And really just kind of talking about all of the amazing insights that Clear has to offer on habits and how they shape our lives.
Right.
So, think about, like, on your own journey, what's one habit that you would love to improve? Keep that in mind as we're unpacking this stuff, because Clear's own story is a powerful example of how these concepts actually work.
What I find really fascinating is how he uses his own personal experiences to illustrate a lot of these concepts.
Right.
He doesn't just talk about the power of small gains. He actually, lived it.
Yeah.
Recovering from that near-fatal baseball accident in high school, he had to rebuild his life physically and mentally.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to grasp, right? Broken bones, detached eyeball seizures.
Yeah.
It would have been easy to just accept limitations. But Clear really focused on those tiny wins, like simply walking in a straight line.
Yeah.
It wasn't about becoming an athlete overnight. It was about getting 1% better each day.
Right. And that's where this whole idea of habits being the compound interest of self-improvement comes in. So just like investing consistent small actions accumulate over time and lead to those massive results.
Okay.
That's how he went from barely functioning to academic All-American.
Oh, wow. See, that's the thing that I need to work on, like the consistent small actions. I'm always trying to do too much at once.
Oh, yeah.
But think about it, like reading just 10 pages a day adds up to multiple books over a year.
Yeah.
So it really highlights how consistency really trumps intensity, especially when it comes to building those lasting habits.
Absolutely. And that connects to another key concept in the book, which is this link between habits and identity.
Okay.
So Clear argues that your current habits reflect who you believe you are.
Oh.
If you act like a healthy person, you reinforce that belief.
Yeah.
Making it easier to maintain those healthy habits.
Yeah. So it's not just about doing the habit. It's about becoming the type of person
Exactly.
who does that.
Embodying it. Yeah.
If you want to be a writer, you act like when you write every day, even if it's just a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to understand how we can change our habits, Clear breaks down habit formation into 4 stages.
Okay.
Cue, craving response and reward, and it's this continuous feedback loop.
So, okay, let's break that down with like a relatable example.
Yeah.
You walk into the kitchen, you see a plate of cookies.
Oh,
That's the cue.
the cue.
You start craving a sweet treat.
Yeah.
That leads you to take a cookie. That's the response.
Right.
And then the reward is that delicious sugary taste.
And that satisfaction makes you more likely to repeat that the next time you see the cookies.
Right.
So understanding this loop is key to changing those habits.
Okay.
And so Clear gives us tools to manipulate this loop,
Right.
making good habits easier and bad habits harder.
So those tools are his 4 laws of behavior change.
Yes.
Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Exactly.
He uses those laws to create a practical framework for modifying any habit.
Yeah.
I love how he doesn't just list them. He brings them to life with examples.
Yeah, there are so many good examples. One that stuck out to me was the point and call method used by Japanese train conductors.
Okay.
They point at each signal and call out its status,
Oh.
reducing errors and increasing awareness.
Yeah.
So it seems so simple, but it's such a powerful way to make a habit obvious.
That's a great example. I'm already thinking about how I can use that in my own life. Maybe putting my running shoes right by the door so I see them first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
What about making habits attractive?
Hmm.
That one seems a bit trickier.
Yeah, so to illustrate that, Clear uses the story of Laszlo Polgar,
Okay.
who raised his daughters to be chess prodigies,
Oh, wow.
and he didn't force them to play. He made chess irresistible by filling their house with chess books and pictures of famous players.
Okay.
So they're creating an environment where chess was not only normal, but celebrated.
So it's about creating an environment where the habit is naturally appealing.
Yes.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
And what about making habits easy?
Okay.
We all want that quick fix, right?
We do, and Clear has a tool for that, which is the 2-minute rule.
Okay.
The idea is to break down any new habit into a ridiculously small starting point.
Okay.
So you want to exercise more?
Yeah.
Just focus on putting on your workout clothes.
That's so simple, it almost feels silly.
Yeah.
But I can see how, overcoming that initial inertia can be huge.
Yeah.
What about making a habit satisfying?
Okay.
It seems like delayed gratification is often the problem.
And that's where finding ways to reward yourself immediately comes in.
Okay.
So Clear talks about saving money, for example.
Right.
It's not immediately satisfying to put money into a savings account.
Yeah.
Because you don't see the benefits right away.
Oh.
So how do you make it satisfying?
Right.
Well, maybe you create like a trip to Europe savings account and transfer money into it every time you skip eating out or something like that.
I like that.
The visual progress plus the anticipation of the trip can make saving more rewarding.
Oh, yeah, that's good. It's about aligning those short-term rewards with your long-term goals.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not just about our internal motivation, right? Clear also talks about how our surroundings play a huge role in shaping our habits.
Absolutely. He shares this fascinating story about a hand-washing study in Pakistan.
Okay.
Researchers wanted to improve hand-washing rates in Karachi,
Right.
where diseases like diarrhea were rampant.
Yeah.
A lot of people knew hand-washing was important,
Yeah.
but they weren't doing it consistently.
Right.
They didn't need more information. They needed a change in behavior.
So how do they tackle that? Did they just tell people to wash their hands more often?
It was much more clever than that they partnered with Procter & Gamble to provide Safeguard soap.
Oh!
But they didn't just hand it out. They made the experience more enjoyable. They provided soap pumps, which are easier and more hygienic than bar soap,
Yeah.
and created fun educational campaigns
Okay.
to promote hand washing.
So they changed the environment and the experience,
Exactly.
not just the message. Did it work?
It did. The results were really impressive. Rates of diarrhea dropped significantly, and the impact lasted even years later.
Wow.
So it showed that even something as simple as making hand washing more enjoyable
Right.
can lead to lasting behavior change.
That's a powerful example of how our environment shapes our actions. If you want to eat healthier, make sure your kitchen is stocked with healthy foods.
Yeah.
Want to read more? Keep a book by your bed or on your coffee table.
Exactly.
It's all about designing your environment to support your desired habits.
And on the flip side, you can design your environment to discourage bad habits.
Right.
Make the cues for bad habits invisible.
Okay, so if we're flipping the script now, how do we make those bad habits harder to do?
We essentially flip the 4 laws.
Okay.
Make the bad habit invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
Okay.
Clear uses a really interesting historical example to illustrate this.
Okay.
The invention of the cash register.
Okay. I'm intrigued. How does the cash register fit into all of this?
Well, back in the late 1800s, employee theft was a major problem. There was no reliable way to track transactions, so employees could easily pocket cash.
Right.
Then James Ritty invented the cash register, which automatically locked the cash and receipts inside after each transaction,
Okay.
making theft nearly impossible.
So it wasn't about changing people's morals. It was about making the bad habit much harder to execute.
Exactly.
You can apply this today. Let's say you want to spend less time on social media.
Right.
You could delete the apps from your phone, making them invisible.
Yeah.
You could log out of your accounts, making it more difficult to access them.
And you could even use those website blocker apps,
Oh, yeah.
adding another layer of difficulty.
Plus, you could remind yourself of those negative consequences,
Right.
like decreased productivity or increased anxiety, making it unsatisfying. It's fascinating how those seemingly small tweaks can have such a big impact.
Absolutely. And Clears offers even more strategies for breaking bad habits,
Okay.
like habit contracts, accountability partners,
Yeah.
and even leveraging technology.
That's where things get really interesting. But before we jump into that, I think it's time for us to take a breath, and maybe you can share a little more about your own experience with habits.
Oh, okay.
Have you struggled with building or breaking any habits? What are some of your personal tips?
You know, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think like most people, I've had my fair share of struggles with habits.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind is my tendency to get sucked into my phone first thing in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'd wake up with the best intentions of starting my day with meditation or reading,
Yeah.
but I'd end up scrolling through social media for an hour before I even realized it.
Oh, I can totally relate to that. It's like my brain is wired to go on autopilot the moment I open my eyes.
No.
So how did you break that habit? Did you use any of Clear's techniques?
I did. I realized I needed to make it more difficult to reach for my phone. So I started putting it in another room before bed, out of sight, out of mind, as they say.
Right.
And it forced me to be more intentional about how I started my day.
That's such a simple but effective strategy. It's amazing how just changing our environment can have such a big impact on our behavior.
Exactly like Clear says. Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior.
Now, speaking of challenges, one thing I've personally struggled with is hitting those plateaus, when you're making progress on a habit,
Yeah.
but then you just stall. It can be so demotivating. Clear talks about finding your Goldilocks zone. But I'm not sure I fully grasp how to actually do that.
That's a great question, and it's something a lot of people struggle with, the Goldilocks zone. It's about finding that sweet spot where a habit is challenging enough to keep you engaged,
Okay.
but not so difficult that it becomes overwhelming.
So it's about striking that balance between pushing yourself and setting realistic expectations.
Precisely. And it's not a fixed point. It's something you need to continually calibrate as you progress. If a habit starts to feel too easy, you might need to increase the difficulty.
Okay.
If it's causing you too much stress or frustration, you might need to scale back.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about constantly assessing your skill level and adjusting the challenge accordingly. It reminds me of the concept of flow state, where you're completely absorbed in an activity that's perfectly matched to your abilities.
That's a great connection. Clear doesn't explicitly mention flow state,
Right.
but I think the principles are very much aligned. When we're in our Goldilocks zone, we're more likely to experience that sense of effortless focus and enjoyment
Right.
that characterizes flow.
And I think that's a key part of maintaining long-term motivation. If we're not enjoying the process, we're much less likely to stick with it.
Absolutely. Clear actually shares an anecdote about his own experience with weightlifting after his baseball injury.
Okay.
He was initially bored by the repetitive nature of the training, but his coach told him something that really resonated with him. At some point, it comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over and over.
That's a powerful insight. It challenges the idea that we need to constantly be seeking novelty and excitement. Sometimes it's about embracing the process, even when it feels mundane.
Exactly. And that's where finding ways to make the process enjoyable can be crucial. Maybe it's listening to music or podcasts while you exercise, or finding a workout buddy to keep you motivated, or simply reminding yourself of the long-term benefits of the habit.
And this brings us to another important point that Clear emphasizes: embracing the process of continuous improvement. It's not about reaching a certain level and then coasting. It's about constantly seeking ways to get 1% better, even with established habits.
That's so true. It's easy to fall into the trap of complacency once we've achieved a certain level of proficiency. But true mastery is about continually refining and optimizing our habits.
So it's not just about building new habits, but also about maintaining and improving upon the ones we've already established. It's about adopting a mindset of lifelong learning and growth.
Precisely. And this is where the concept of reflection and review becomes so important.
Right.
Clear suggests building in regular reflection periods into our routines,
Okay.
whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly.
So it's about taking the time to step back and ask ourselves, what's working?
Yeah.
What's not working?
What can I adjust or improve?
I love how Clear provides those specific questions to guide our reflection.
Right. It's not just about mindless repetition. It's about conscious and intentional practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sets apart those who simply dabble in habits from those who truly master them.
That's such a crucial point. It's about bringing awareness to our actions, not just going through the motions on autopilot.
And speaking of awareness, I want to circle back to a concept we touched on earlier, the idea of identity-based habits.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that really stuck with me. It's such a powerful concept, the idea that our habits are not just isolated actions, but reflections of who we believe we are and who we aspire to become.
It's like that quote, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. It's such a powerful reminder that our daily choices, even the seemingly insignificant ones, are shaping the person we are becoming.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's so important to be intentional about the habits we cultivate.
Yeah.
If we want to become healthier, we need to adopt the habits of a healthy person. If we want to become more creative, we need to adopt the habits of a creative person.
So it's not just about the external results, but about the internal transformation that occurs when we align our actions with our desired identity.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes identity-based habits so powerful. They're not just about achieving a specific goal,
Right.
but about becoming a certain kind of person.
It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination.
Precisely. And speaking of journeys, one of the things that really resonated with me in Clear's book was his discussion of the four burners theory. It's this thought-provoking analogy that really challenges us to think about our priorities and how we allocate our time and energy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I'm not familiar with this theory. Can you break it down for me?
Sure, imagine that your life is represented by a stove with four burners.
Okay.
Each burner represents a different area of your life: family, friends, work, and health. The theory suggests that to be successful in any one area, you need to turn down the heat on the other burners.
So it's acknowledging that we can't have it all at the same time.
Exactly.
There are trade-offs.
It's about recognizing that our time and energy are finite resources, and we need to be intentional about how we allocate them.
Right.
If we're focusing on building a successful career, we might need to temporarily scale back on our social life or hobbies. Or if we're prioritizing family time,
Okay.
we might need to work fewer hours or delegate some tasks.
It's a powerful reminder to be honest with ourselves about our priorities and to make conscious choices about where we focus our efforts.
Right. And it's not about neglecting any one area completely. It's about finding a balance that works for us at any given time.
It's about being mindful and intentional about how we live our lives.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this is not a permanent state. We can adjust the burners as needed over time.
Right.
Maybe we focus on building our career for a few years and then shift our priority to family or travel.
Okay.
The key is to be flexible and adaptable.
It's about recognizing that life is a journey with different seasons and priorities. And speaking of journeys, Clear also talks about the importance of exploring our natural inclinations and talents.
Yes, he argues that we're more likely to be successful and fulfilled when we pursue activities that align with our natural abilities and interests. It's like playing a game where the odds are in your favor.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to be good at something we're not naturally inclined towards, but rather about seeking out activities that come easily to us. I think this is something a lot of people struggle with. We're often told to follow our passions, but sometimes it's not clear what those passions are.
That's a great point. It's not always easy to identify our natural strengths and talents. Clear suggests a few strategies, like paying attention to the activities we gravitate towards, naturally reflecting on past experiences where we've achieved success, and experimenting with new things.
It's about being curious and open to discovering hidden talents.
Exactly. And once we've identified our areas of strength, it's important to find ways to apply those strengths
Okay.
in a way that's both personally meaningful and valuable to others.
So it's about finding our unique contribution to the world and pursuing it with passion and dedication.
Precisely. And this brings us to another important point that Clear makes about the nature of success. It's not a linear process.
Ah, yes. He talks about the bamboo plant, which spends years developing a complex root system
Yes.
before it finally shoots up seemingly overnight.
It's such a powerful analogy. It reminds us that much of our growth happens beneath the surface.
Right.
And that persistence and patience are essential for achieving lasting success.
It's about trusting the process even when we don't see immediate results.
Exactly. And it's about embracing a growth mindset, believing that our abilities are not fixed, but can be developed through effort and learning.
It's about seeing setbacks and failures as opportunities for growth, rather than as evidence of our limitations.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another crucial aspect of habit formation, the role of self-reflection and review.
Clear emphasizes that it's not enough to simply set goals and start working towards them. We need to regularly step back and assess our progress. I know I can be bad about this, just charging ahead without taking the time to see if I'm even on the right track.
I think we all struggle with that. Sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the doing and forget about the reflecting. But Clear is right. Reflection is crucial for continuous improvement. He suggests building in regular reflection periods into our routines, whether it's daily journaling or a weekly review of our goals.
It's like taking inventory of our habits and making adjustments as needed.
Exactly. And it's also about seeking feedback from others. Sometimes we have blind spots that we can't see ourselves.
A fresh perspective from someone we trust can be invaluable. But, all this talk about building systems and reflecting on our progress can feel a little overwhelming. Where does one even begin?
That's a great point. It can be overwhelming, especially when you're first starting out. But I think Clear does a good job of breaking it down into manageable steps.
So where would you suggest start at? What's the most important first step?
Well, I think the first step is to identify your core values. What's truly important to you? What do you want your life to stand for? Your values will guide your choices and ensure that your system is aligned with your overall life goals.
So before you even start thinking about specific habits, you need to define what matters most to you. It's about creating a foundation for your actions.
Exactly. Your values will be the compass that guides you on your habit-building journey. Once you have a clear understanding of your values, you can then set specific goals and develop a system of habits that support those goals.
And it's important to remember that it's a process, not a destination. There will be setbacks and challenges along the way, but as long as we keep our values in mind and stay committed to the process, we can achieve amazing things.
Absolutely. And speaking of achieving amazing things, Clears has a great chapter on the aggregation of marginal gains. This idea that small incremental improvements,
Okay.
when consistently applied over time,
Yeah.
can lead to significant results.
Okay. I've heard this term before, but I'm not sure I fully understand how it applies to habit formation.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Clear uses the example of the British cycling team, which, under the leadership of coach Dave Brailsford, adopted a philosophy of seeking out 1% improvements
Okay.
in every aspect of their training and preparation.
So instead of focusing on making big, sweeping changes, they look for tiny areas where they could optimize performance.
It's exactly. This included things like optimizing the aerodynamics of the bikes, finding the most comfortable racing suits, and even teaching the riders how to wash their hands properly to avoid infections.
Wow, that's incredible. It seems like such a simple idea, but the results speak for themselves.
Right, and the principle of aggregation of marginal gains applies to any area of life, whether you're trying to improve your health, your relationships, your career, or your finances. Small, consistent improvements can make a big difference over time.
So it's not about finding that one magic solution. It's about making small, consistent efforts in all areas of our lives.
Exactly, and it's about being patient and trusting the process. It's like Claire says, success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
Precisely, and speaking of the journey, Claire also delves into the philosophical implications of his work. He explores the connection between habits and identity, the role of habits in shaping our destiny, and the importance of cultivating virtuous habits.
That's fascinating. It takes the concept of habits beyond just personal productivity and into the realm of character development and societal impact.
Absolutely. He argues that our habits are not just actions we perform, they are reflections of who we are and who we aspire to become. Our habits shape our thoughts, our emotions, and ultimately our character.
He cites the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, who said, what we repeatedly do excellence then is not an act, but a habit.
It's such a powerful quote. It reminds us that our daily choices, even the seemingly insignificant ones, are shaping the person we are becoming.
And not just our individual lives, but the world around us.
Exactly. Claire argues that virtuous habits are the foundation of a just and flourishing society. When we develop habits of kindness, compassion, honesty, and integrity, we create a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of our actions and the impact they have on others.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another important point that Clear makes about the nature of habits. They are not always a smooth and linear process. There are obstacles and challenges that we're likely to encounter along the way.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all experienced that frustration of trying to build a new habit and then hitting a roadblock.
Yeah.
It can be so discouraging.
It's definitely a common experience. Clear discusses a few common pitfalls to watch out for, like setting unrealistic expectations, trying to change too many things at once, and lacking accountability.
Okay, so let's talk about those pitfalls. What are some strategies for overcoming them?
Well, when it comes to setting unrealistic expectations, it's important to remember that habit formation is a marathon, not a sprint. We need to be patient and celebrate small victories rather than striving for perfection.
That's a good reminder. It's easy to get caught up in wanting to see results quickly, but real change takes time and consistent effort.
Exactly. And when it comes to trying to change too many things at once, it's important to focus on building one habit at a time. Once the new habit becomes automatic, we can then add another market. Clears also suggests starting with small, easy habits and gradually increasing the difficulty as we build confidence and momentum.
That makes sense. It's about setting ourselves up for success, not overwhelming ourselves with too much change at once. What about accountability? How can we stay on track when we're only accountable to ourselves?
That's where finding ways to build in external accountability can be helpful. This could involve working with a coach or a mentor, joining a support group, or even just telling a friend about our habit goal and asking them to check in with us regularly.
So it's about leveraging the power of social support to keep us motivated and on track.
Exactly. And it's also about developing a resilient mindset, one that can handle the inevitable setbacks and failures.
Yes, the dreaded slip-ups. They happen to the best of us. How does Clear suggest we deal with them?
Well, instead of viewing setbacks as reasons to give up, he encourages us to see them as opportunities for learning and growth.
It's about reframing our perspective and finding the lesson in the mistake.
Exactly. He suggests asking ourselves, what can I learn from this experience? How can I prevent this from happening again? What adjustments can I make to my approach?
It's about turning those setbacks into stepping stones. But I think one of the most challenging aspects of habit formation is dealing with those intense cravings and temptations. It's like our brain is wired to seek out immediate gratification.
Yeah.
even when we know it's not in our best interests.
That's so true. It's like a constant battle between our rational mind and our emotional impulses. But Claire offers some helpful strategies for overcoming those cravings and temptations.
Okay, I'm all ears. I need all the help I can get in that department.
One approach is to increase the friction associated with the undesired behavior.
Okay.
Make it more difficult or inconvenient to engage in the habit.
So it's about making the bad habit less accessible. It's like that idea of putting your phone in another room before bed to avoid scrolling first thing in the morning.
Exactly. You could also remove tempting foods from your house if you're trying to eat healthier, or unsubscribe from email newsletters that trigger your shopping impulses.
It's about creating an environment that supports your desired behaviors.
Precisely. And another strategy is to focus on the long-term consequences of our actions. It's easy to give in to temptation when we're only thinking about the immediate gratification.
But when we remind ourselves of the bigger picture, it can help us stay on track.
Exactly. If you're tempted to skip your workout, remind yourself how good you'll feel afterward and how much progress you'll make towards your fitness goals.
It's about shifting our focus from the short-term pleasure to the long-term benefits. Any other tips for dealing with those pesky cravings?
Well, another helpful technique is to develop a plan for dealing with cravings.
Okay.
Know what you're going to do when the urge strikes,
Yeah.
and have a strategy in place for redirecting your attention or engaging in a more positive behavior.
So it's about having a game plan instead of just trying to white-knuckle it through the craving.
Exactly. If you're craving sugary snacks, you might have a piece of fruit or go for a walk instead.
It's about finding healthy alternatives that satisfy the craving without derailing your progress.
Precisely. And lastly, Clear emphasizes the importance of self-compassion. We're all human, and we're all going to slip up from time to time. The key is to not beat ourselves up when we make mistakes.
Yeah.
Instead, we should acknowledge our slip-up, learn from it, and get back on track.
That's such an important point. It's easy to get caught in that cycle of guilt and shame when we make mistakes, but that just makes it harder to get back on track.
Absolutely. Self-compassion is essential for long-term success. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress and that setbacks are a natural part of the journey.
And speaking of the journey, Claire talks about the compounding effect of habits. This idea that our habits are not isolated actions, but rather they are interconnected and have a ripple effect throughout our lives.
It's like a snowball rolling down a hill as the snowball rolls. It gathers more snow, becoming larger and more powerful. Similarly, our habits, when consistently practiced, can create a compounding effect that leads to significant and lasting change.
It's a powerful image. It really highlights how those seemingly small, everyday actions can accumulate over time and create massive results.
Exactly, and this compounding effect applies to both good habits and bad habits. Good habits, when consistently practiced, can lead to improvements in our health, our relationships, our careers, and our overall well-being. But bad habits, when left unchecked, can have a detrimental effect on our lives, leading to negative consequences and missed opportunities.
It's a powerful reminder to be mindful of the habits we cultivate and to focus on building a system of positive habits that will support our long-term goals and aspirations. But as we've been discussing, habit formation is a complex process, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Absolutely. What works for one person may not work for another. Clear emphasizes the importance of experimenting with different techniques, finding what resonates with us personally, and being willing to adjust our approach as needed. It's about taking ownership of our habit-building journey and finding what works best for us.
And it's about being patient and persistent. It's about embracing the ups and downs of the journey and never giving up on ourselves.
Exactly. Habit formation is a lifelong process, not a quick fix. It's about committing to continuous improvement to becoming the best versions of ourselves.
And speaking of becoming the best versions of ourselves, I think it's important to acknowledge that habits are not just about personal productivity or efficiency. They are a reflection of our values and priorities.
That's such an important point. Our habits reveal what we truly care about, how we spend our time and energy, and ultimately what kind of life we're creating.
They're a window into our souls in a way.
Exactly. And Clear challenges us to examine our habits and to ask ourselves if they are aligned with our values and aspirations. If our habits are not supporting our goals and leading us towards the life we want to live, then it's time to make a change.
It's about taking responsibility for the choices we make and the actions we take each day.
And it's about remembering that we have the power to change.
Mm-hmm.
We're not defined by our past habits. we can always choose to create new habits that support the life we want to live.
It's a message of hope and empowerment. It's about recognizing that we are the architects of our own lives.
Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into James Clear's Atomic Habits, I want to highlight a few key takeaways that have really resonated with me.
Yes, please do. I'm eager to hear your insights.
Well, first, I've been struck by the power of small, consistent actions. Clear reminds us that we don't need to make drastic changes to see significant results. Small, incremental improvements, when consistently applied over time, can lead to remarkable transformations.
I think that's such an important takeaway. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the thought of making big changes. But Clear's message is that it's the small, consistent actions that really add up over time.
Exactly, and this leads to another key takeaway: the importance of focusing on systems, not goals. Clear argues that goals are about the results we want to achieve, while systems are about the processes that lead to those results. By focusing on building effective systems, we create a framework for consistent progress and increase our likelihood of achieving our desired outcomes.
It's about shifting our focus from the destination to the journey.
Precisely. And I've also been inspired by Clear's emphasis on the importance of cultivating a growth mindset. He reminds us that our abilities are not fixed, but rather they can be developed through effort. And learning this has encouraged me to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth and to view setbacks as temporary roadblocks rather than permanent failures.
That's such a powerful mindset shift. It's about embracing the journey of lifelong learning and growth.
Exactly. And lastly, I've been deeply moved by Clear's message of hope and empowerment. He reminds us that we have the power to change our lives by changing our habits, no matter where we are in our journey. It's never too late to start building positive habits and to create the life we want to live.
It's about taking ownership of our lives and recognizing that we have the power to shape our own destiny.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most valuable gifts that Clear's book offers: a sense of agency and possibility. It's a reminder that we are not victims of our circumstances, but rather we are the creators of our own reality.
And we create that reality one habit at a time.
Exactly. Now, before we move on to my observations and concluding thoughts, I'd love to hear what stood out to you the most from our discussion so far. Was there anything that particularly resonated with you or sparked any new ideas?
One thing that really hit home for me was, Clear's discussion of the Goldilocks zone. It made me realize how often I give up on things because they become either too easy and boring or too difficult and overwhelming. I'm definitely going to be more mindful about finding that sweet spot in my own life.
That's fantastic. It's such a crucial concept for maintaining motivation and engagement. And remember, it's not about finding a fixed point. It's about continually calibrating the challenge as you progress.
Right. It's about that constant process of self-awareness and adjustment now, in addition to the key takeaways you shared. I also wanted to mention how much Clear's emphasis on the impact of our environment resonated with me.
Oh, absolutely. The environment is such a powerful yet often overlooked factor in shaping our habits.
Yeah.
Clear really highlights the importance of designing our surroundings to support our desired behaviors.
It's like setting ourselves up for success before we even start, whether it's removing temptations, setting up visual reminders, or creating dedicated spaces for specific activities. Our environment can either help or hinder our progress.
Exactly. It's about making the cues for good habits obvious and the cues for bad habits invisible. And it's not just about our physical environment, but also our social environment.
Right. Finding the right accountability partners can make a world of difference. Yeah. Having someone to support us, encourage us, and hold us accountable can be a game changer.
Absolutely. And it's not just about having someone to check in with. It's about surrounding ourselves with people who share our values and goals. It's about creating a community that supports our growth.
And I think that leads perfectly into another takeaway that really stood out to me: the power of identity-based habits. When we focus on becoming the kind of person who embodies our desired habits, it becomes much easier to maintain those habits over time.
Yes, that's such a key point. It's about shifting our focus from the what to the who. It's about aligning our actions with our desired identity.
It's not just about losing weight. It's about becoming a healthy person. It's not just about writing a book. It's about becoming a writer.
Exactly. It's about embodying the identity we want to create for ourselves. And that's a much more powerful and sustainable motivator than simply striving for external results.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Atomic Habits, I want to leave our listener with a few questions to ponder: what is one small habit you can start building today that would have a positive impact on your life?
And how can you design your environment and leverage social support to make it easier to stick with that habit?
Remember, even small changes, when consistently applied over time, can lead to remarkable results. It's not about perfection, but about progress.
And it's never too late to start building the life you want, one habit at a time.
Thanks for your time, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next brief read.